Welcome to a new episode of the brand called You. I've brought you lots and lots of interesting people, and today we have a very exciting young lady, Vani Gupta Dandia, on our show. Vani, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Vani is a BCom honors and she's an MBA. She spent 20 years in the corporate world, Leo Burnett, Reckitt Benckiser, Unilever, and PepsiCo. Business Today named her amongst the hottest young executives under 40 in 2015. And now she's become an entrepreneur with a company called CherryPeachPlum. And I'm going to ask her why she has 3 fruits in it. But Vani, talk to me a little bit about your early years and your journey from personal care to food. What were some of your learnings?
Right. So I actually started with advertising.
Okay.
Because in MBA, I loved consumer behavior. In fact, to be honest, that was the only subject I loved. Everything else, I just somehow got by. And advertising seemed to be the best avenue to explore all aspects of consumer behavior. So I jumped into advertising, and very soon I found that it was actually nothing like what I'd imagined it to be in the books.
Okay.
So after a couple of years, I then started looking for marketing opportunities. And my then husband was in Chennai. And in Chennai, the only company that is worth talking about is Henkel. So I went to Henkel, and I was very fortunate. I got a job. And so I started with them as a young brand manager on FAR.
Okay.
And the irony was that while I was very, very happy with having bagged the job, they didn't have a penny to spend.
Okay. Okay.
So it was a lot of playing around with sales data, and it was making the best of what they did have. We sponsored Far Femina Miss India. And from there began my journey of lifestyle brands. I thoroughly enjoyed that stint. Then I moved to Reckitt Benckiser.
Yeah.
I launched a wheat with Reckitt Benckiser.
Okay.
Then moved to Levers. I was headhunted by them on Sunsilk, but soon I moved on to the entire hair portfolio.
Wow.
And that was a very, very, very rich, rewarding experience, because I was working on a global project, which was to launch a range of hair care products for colored hair.
Okay.
And so I did that for 5 years. I was working on with a multicultural team. My boss then was based in Bangkok. I tried working from Bombay and then figured that it doesn't work. So I was doing, the red-eye flight every week.
Wow.
From Bombay to Bangkok. And then I moved to PepsiCo Foods.
Okay.
And PepsiCo was nothing like I'd ever done anything before. It was a very Wild West cowboy culture. I came from Levers, which was very strictly regimented,
I agree.
where there was a strategy for absolutely everything. Every step you took, there was something written down somewhere on what you've got to do. But Pepsi was none of that, and Pepsi was not about strictly bucketing job descriptions into functional bits. It was everything. So it didn't matter what you were.
So from hair care, which I would classify as a beauty,
Yes.
to food, what were some of the interesting differences you found in these portfolios?
Well, hair care is very, very sensorial. I would have days when I do nothing but just flip through Cosmopolitans and Vogue, and I'd have my friends looking at me and saying, really, this can't be a job. And food with PepsiCo is very, very functional. Food as a category is very, very functional.
Correct.
So, it's about the delivery in the mouth. It's about, it's everything. In some ways, it's a very rational decision. But in some ways, it's also very, very similar to beauty, in the sense that just as in beauty, there has to be this seduction value of I want it. What it actually does to you is actually more that you believe in your head rather than what it actually does to you. And similarly, so for food, it's all to do with the drool value. The only reason, especially for an impulse snack, the only way that you can get picked up as an impulse snack is A, if you stand out in the clutter, and B, if you're able to create immediate drool value. So I must see for example, a packet of kurkure, and
Yeah.
as soon as I see it, I must have this
The urge.
mouthful of drool. I like
Yeah.
I can't not have it.
Yeah.
So it is a marketer's job to create that.
Correct. And I guess in your Unilever days, we were talking about the good hair days and the bad hair days.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I tried a lot of stuff on my hair, and I have some crazy pictures.
Wonderful. So, after 20 years in the corporate world, a very successful career, what made you decide to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah. This was actually very, very, very unexpected.
Mhm.
And until even 3 years back or 4 years back, I would have never imagined that I'd actually look at being an entrepreneur. I was so certain that my life would be a very straitjacketed corporate life. But I think in some ways, Pepsi gave me the courage to turn entrepreneur.
Correct.
Because Pepsi was so much about everything.
Mhm.
And in Pepsi, a lot of times one just felt it's entirely up to you to do what you wish to do.
Mhm.
And I think having spent 20 years in the corporate career, I felt I'd just sort of seen it all, done it all. Every time I thought of the next role, I felt this I've already done. And I did actually explore opportunities with a lot of other
Mhm.
companies. And every interview I went for, I felt, oh, it's just the same. The people will change, the office will change, the category will change. But otherwise, it's all the same.
Wonderful.
And so that started to create anxiety in me about what can I do next. And I had sort of started speaking with entrepreneurs on LinkedIn. They were reaching out to me, and I was giving them some informal
Mhm.
mentorship sort of advice. And then I started to think, what if I were to make something of this itself?
Mhm.
So quite honestly, actually, when I put in my papers at Pepsi, I had no clue
Okay.
of what I'd be doing.
Mhm.
I just jumped.
Mhm.
I just went and put in my papers thinking I'll figure it out. I can't be so badly off. I have some money in the bank, and let's see where I go.
Terrific.
And that's how I started.
Terrific. That reminds me of, I'm much older than you, but reminds me of my own story. 1st April 2003, which is how I start my first book. I said I woke up on 1st April 2003 without a job. And I realized that I had joined the ranks of the educated unemployed. And of course, later on, we
Yeah.
founded Guardian and so on.
Yeah.
But
It
very,
is
very,
a-
very courageous. of you to
Yeah,
have-
but it's also very liberating
Right.
to feel that I don't have to remain prisoner to what is considered conventionally right. To feel I can do whatever I wish to,
Correct.
and it's okay. It's okay to explore. It's okay to not have a job. It's
Correct.
okay to figure what I will do next.
Yeah,
Is a big
fascinating.
thing.
Fascinating. So one more question before I come to Cherry Peach
Yes.
Plum. You when I was reading about you, you said that you're involved in driving change. Help me understand these two words and how do you carry people?
So actually, driving change came to me as a function of the different jobs I happened to land in.
Mhm.
And I think by my 3rd job, I realized I've pretty much become a behavioral change expert in some ways. Because with FAR, we didn't have monies, but we were looking to have Indians adopt deodorants
Mhm.
as a practice.
Correct.
Where, to be honest, actually Rexona and Axe at that time were doing all of the education. But we were a more premium priced brand. And so we used to face resistance from trade, but also from consumers in the sense that there was this price barrier.
Mhm.
We had to overcome that. And then when I went to Reckitt Benckiser and we were to launch wheat, we were actually under a lot of pressure from the global team to do a slam dunk of the global strategy
Okay.
into this part of the world.
Mhm.
And it took us about 3 months to have protracted conversations with them, show them a lot of data, and help them understand that, what Indians do for depilation, which is
Correct.
hair removal, is very, very different from what they do in the West. And our attitudes are very different. The way we look at this category is very different. It's not very, it's not functional. It's more beauty focused. And where it is functional, it doesn't make money.
Okay.
And similarly, so for hair, because colored hair at that time was a very nascent category.
Right.
So in all of this, I realized that actually driving change, whether it's within the organization or with consumers, requires persistence.
Okay.
You can't. It's easy to say, let me take what is the templated approach, and I'm going to do this job for another year and a half, 2 years. Let me make everybody happy by doing what I've been asked to do, because then nobody can challenge me if things were to go wrong. After all, I did what you asked me to do. But it takes a lot of gumption, it takes a lot of self-belief, and it takes persistence to do what you think is right. And the other bit, I think, which is very, very important, is to help your own team. And more than superiors, I've seen it's actually the team that you have reporting into you. To have their support is more critical.
Okay.
Because if as a team you're unanimous on what you're putting up as a proposal, then that logic becomes almost indefensible. You know. So for me, it was always about building conviction within my team, and my team knew that if we work together, then I'd always have their back.
Terrific.
And I think just that saw me get through a lot of tough times, because I knew that my team would be committed, and they knew I had their back.
Wonderful. So Vani, let's move on. Let's move to your venture, CherryPeachPlum. You know, before you tell us about the venture, tell me about the name. I mean, why 3 fruits?
Yeah, I love the name. I absolutely love the name. So this name actually came from a Soka philosophy. So I'm a Soka Gakkai follower, and this was founded by Nichiren Daishonin, who was a 12th century sage. And the philosophy of CherryPeachPlum is that each one of us is unique.
Okay.
Each one of us has very different characteristics. And each one of us must shine in our best possible way.
Correct.
In the universe.
Correct.
And we do that, then we are giving our best. We are doing what we were born to do in this universe. So I really like this philosophy, because there was a time when I was a very underconfident child, and I used to read this over and over again, and it just gave me a lot of reassurance, a lot of confidence to know that I don't have to be like anyone else. I don't have to speak as well as someone else, and I don't have to have that vocabulary, and I don't have to look like someone else, and I can just be the best of me.
Terrific.
And it applies to brands and businesses as well, because even for every brand and business, their challenges are different.
They are unique.
And you have to help every business shine to its full potential. So that's how.
So now tell me about the venture. What exactly do you do, and how do you support so many people?
Yeah. So it actually started out by being I started out by being an independent consultant. And in some ways, actually, I'm still that. And I take pride in the fact that I'm small. Small in the sense that I take up a limited number of assignments, and I'm very intricately involved myself. I don't have a team of employees. I do work with a few team members, but I bring them on a contract basis. And essentially what CherryPeachPlum does is that we take business problems and we come with solutions which are co-created with the client's team. And we work towards not just crafting the solutions, but also executing them. I take a lot of pride in the execution. So it's, while I am a marketing professional, but I think marketing by itself is limiting as a word to use, as is the word consultant, because consultant conjures up images which, associations which are not necessarily the most.
Correct.
But what I've been doing is actually a variety of challenges, and I've been working on, like I said, from strategy to execution. It's a lot of working with the client in their offices.
So, without giving names, would you be able to share just one or two kind of challenges you face?
Yeah, sure. So, for example, my first project that I first started working on, the challenge that I had was we need to double our footfalls in our branches, if possible, in the next 6 months. Okay. We're spending a lot of money. And we don't know what we're doing wrong. Is it the messaging or the media, or what is it that we're not doing correct? We're not able to drive footfalls into our branches. So that was a simple brief that I had.
Okay.
And I started working with the team to diagnose all elements of the business. And we then crafted a full relaunch strategy for the brand. We had a new proposition. We figured how that proposition could come alive in all the different aspects of their business. We didn't have time to recruit agencies because they didn't have any creative or media agencies or digital agencies. So we worked pretty much with freelancers who I brought in from my own personal network.
Okay.
And we created something for them in the next couple of months, and touch wood, it gave them results that they'd stated.
Terrific. So, just a question on, you said you're a consultant and you also execute. I have come across very few consultants who like to execute. Do you see any contradiction between consulting and execution?
No, not at all. In fact, I think if consulting is devoid of execution, it shouldn't be paid for, because it is the execution that delivers results.
Correct.
And for anybody, if I were a business owner, if I didn't see results, then to have somebody give me empty gyan and go away can be very, 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 I'd feel cheated. So, and even for someone who does come on board and has spent their intellectual energy crafting a solution, even that person is likely to feel shortchanged if it is not executed in a manner such that it actually delivers results.
Correct.
Because the two are so intricately linked, and in fact, strategy is only as good as its execution.
Correct.
So if you're not able to show proof of the pudding via the results that you've delivered, that strategy is no good.
That's a breath of fresh air,
Yeah.
For people who listen to our podcast, because consultants are generally seen to be people who will walk in, prescribe, give a report, and walk away.
Yeah.
But that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So, Vani, moving on to the next segment, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about startups, because you have your own startup, and I'm sure you do work with a lot of startups. We know that in our country, or for that matter, anywhere in the world, only 1 in 10 startups makes it. 9 don't make it.
Correct.
For various reasons.
Correct.
Based on your learnings and your understanding, what are some of the key mistakes a lot of startup entrepreneurs make?
Well, let me start by just talking about my own, because I started one a year back, more than a year back, just as I left Pepsi. And at that time, I didn't have the confidence to sort of go it all alone. So I very quickly jumped into this arrangement where I had 2 other co-founders, and without getting into the details, basically we realized that we had a very different vision for the company, and we had very different styles of working. And one of the learnings for me was just this, that unless A, you're very sure about what you want, and B, you're sure about who you partner with, it is unlikely to succeed.
Correct.
The other one that I've also seen is just the fact that in most cases, I've seen entrepreneurs have a very, very strong, passionate attachment to the product.
Correct.
But they're not able to sort of build a connect with consumers in terms of what should I be saying about my offering such that consumers would want it. Why am I in this business? Which is not me out, but consumer out. How am I solving your problem that hasn't been solved for so far?
Correct.
So just that, I think. And the other bit is that as startups grow, they're not able to carry the whole team along. So there are a lot of, everybody comes in and then suddenly everybody starts to function as silos, and there is a lot of hectic work. You see a lot of pace and energy, but there isn't one unified understanding of what business are we in.
Correct.
What is it that we're chasing?
Yep.
If there were just one shared goal, which was absolutely clear and that could be articulated in the same way across the company, that in itself would be the fuel for a lot of growth.
Agree. So one more question on startups before we move to some questions for you personally. You're a marketing
Yes.
expert, and you spent such a long time. In today's age of social media, how important are all these multiple social media platforms to build a brand?
I'd say it's very important.
It is.
Yeah. Because today everybody is talking, and we're all putting out something about ourselves in some ways on different platforms, depending on what platform it is, or or um, or how we'd like to relate with the world. And we're also consuming information from friends and others, and we're making impressions of them. And today, the reality is that there's just so much out there in the online world that you're constantly insecure in some ways about, what am I buying, or what am I considering, or what am I being thought of, or blah, blah. So, where you're constantly checking, you can't, as a marketer, you can't not moderate that discussion.
Correct.
Or have a point of view, or manage the voice in the social media in order for your brand to have certain associations, or in order for it to be thought positively.
Yeah.
So one has to, Now, I was talking to someone about how, on Instagram today, for young entrepreneurs who are reaching out to the young audience, for them, actually, Instagram is such a powerful tool.
agree.
Because you don't need any money at all.
Yeah.
And if you say the right things about your brand, and if you have the right kind of post, you can actually effect sales with just one Instagram post.
Amazing.
And I have become a great fan of some brands which I just discovered on Instagram. And I've spent a lot of money. I mean, I was working, just a couple of days earlier. I sat down to work. And then I thought, I'll allow myself this one little indulgence. Let me just go on Instagram and just quickly scroll through before I start work. And within the next 45 minutes, I'd found this brand of homeware. And I'd ordered about 20 grand stuff. It was all kinds of stuff that I didn't need.
I agree.
It was just such a pretty post.
Yes.
And so I think social media is dramatically changing how we're shopping, how we're interacting with brands, how we're interacting with others, informing opinions on everything around us.
Wonderful. So, a question now for you as a lady. Gender balance is something that in India we're beginning to talk about a lot. Everyone's scrambling to ensure that there is a gender balance. I also believe that we have been slow in getting a balance, whether it's in organizations or anything else. You have been a very successful lady. What are some of your thoughts on gender balance?
I think it's not easy. It's not easy to stick out as a woman in an organization where you don't naturally flow into conversations. You don't naturally flow into the grapevine. And the reality is that in an organization, it's actually the grapevine, it's the informal networks, it's the informal conversations, even with your superiors, that make a dramatic difference to your career. You're not standing there for the sutta breaks, and you can't, because a lot of times your superiors are not comfortable having the kind of conversation that they would otherwise have with your male peer. So it is tough. But having said that, the only way to sort of get around it is being very good at your work, for sure. B, over communicating. And I've always told all my women direct reports, it's important to sit at the table. When I say sit at the table, it's a very simple, practical, it might even sound very flippant. But for example, at Pepsi, we'd have a lot of meetings where there'd be a zillion people in the room. And very quickly, all of the chairs would be taken. And a lot of people would be standing in the fringes of the room. And I'd always tell my brand managers, who were girls, that you must sit at the table. I don't care if your agenda in that entire day's meeting is only 10 minutes agenda, but I need you to be sitting at the table.
Wonderful.
And be able to have a voice. And it's also important to express your opinion irrespective of whether you think it's small or big.
Correct.
Because, a woman does have to work doubly
I
hard
agree.
in order to be heard. The other thing that I feel very passionately about in order to just improve the gender balance, which I think is very important, because as a woman, even if you're a very strong, opinionated woman, it is not easy to be the only voice in the room.
Correct.
And the only way of improving that balance is actually to effect it via policy. It's one thing to say, oh, we're open to merit, and if there were good, capable women who come seeking jobs, we'd be happy to offer them jobs. But I think organizations can only tangibly make a difference if they were to effect it via policy.
Amazing.
And a lot of people would say, oh, but then you're compromising on the quality of talent. And I'd say, boom.
Tough luck.
Exactly.
Well said.
Exactly.
Okay.
Unless it be effected via policy that X percentage at every level must necessarily be women. Go find those women, poach them from wherever.
Yeah.
But make spectacular examples of what an organization could be.
Correct.
And in 5 years' time, you'd see the difference that gender balance makes to the business delivery.
Very well said.
Because it impacts culture, it impacts how people work. I mean, I've seen I had a girl brand manager who handled one of my toughest projects. And what she did, I'd always tell the entire team, nobody else could have done it, because she brought in people dynamics that I felt nobody else could. And that was very, very critical to delivering a project like that.
Amazing. That's very well said. So, Vani, I only have time for a few more questions for you personally. First question would be, what would be 3 adjectives that describe you?
I'd say positive, spunky, and a believer.
Okay. Wonderful. Well said. Well said. You also have an interest in painting, sculpture, and theatre.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about this.
Yeah. So, I absolutely love painting, but I hate myself for the fact that I haven't been making enough time for it. In fact, there is this one big mural on our wall at home, which my son and I are doing together. And my son keeps telling me, when are we going to bring that down and when are we going to work on it together? But it's there. And just looking at it gives us a lot of joy to know that there is something that we can work on.
Terrific.
And we have a room full. We have a whole cupboard full of a lot of different kinds of paints and art material. So I do absolutely love it. And it is my dream to go back to it in a big way at some point in time. On theatre, I dabbled with a little bit of theatre when I was with Levers. And there was a short period of time when I wasn't traveling as much. And I took up a summer workshop, and I did about 20 plays at Prithvi and NCPA. And those were Hindi plays. And I never thought I'd do Hindi, because it was learning by rote, long Hindi lines, which I didn't think I could do, but I had a lot of fun. And more than the plays itself, it was just the camaraderie with my co-actors and, living their life. And, it's a very different life, looking for the little sutta butts and, the chai. We had a lot of fun.
So, Vani, 2 more questions.
Yes.
For you. One is a question on failure. A lot of people in our country, Indians particularly, and maybe Chinese, don't teach children that it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
What have been some of your learnings from some of your mistakes or your failures?
I think it's, I used to be very hard on myself at one point in time, but I think thanks to my prayers and Buddhism, I've changed dramatically. And I've learned to now forgive myself. And thankfully now, I think even in schools, there is a greater acceptance of the fact that it's not just marks, but it's the effort you make. Like, with my son, I see that. I find that the teachers in his school are actually very good, and they encourage the effort made. And I keep telling myself the same thing. I might have failed. Not everything I'm very proud of, stuff that I've done in my personal life. But you tell yourself it's okay. I've learned from it. And thankfully, I have a very short memory, which really helps.
Never look back is what I always say.
Exactly. So I'm very quick to wipe out stuff that I'm not very proud of and tell myself it's okay, next time I'll do better and move on. Yeah, I think that's the only way to get by life.
Absolutely. Vani, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I
This was
wish you
easier
lots
than
of
I thought.
success.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You podcast. Be sure to visit tbcy.in to join the conversation, access show notes, and discover fantastic bonus content. You can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Simply search for The Brand Called You. Thank you and see you next week.